How many people have ever sold a job? When you have a career and you're working for someone else, you're not building anything to sell later. Are there tax benefits to being an employee? None. No tax benefits. You're creating an asset. When you have business, you have something that you can sell. Every dollar that you make, you're creating this value and it's worth a multiple of that. This is one of the big reasons why franchising is really great, is this level of support. Have people on site as you're opening, and before that, to help prepare for the grand opening, they're going to have the franchise business coach that's going to talk to you on a regular basis. It's one of the things that makes this attainable.
Welcome to the Franchise Champion Show. I'm your host, Alan Regala, CEO and founder of Athlete to Owner Franchise Coaching. I was a D1 athlete and used the principles of high performance training to build and sell a multi-million-dollar franchise business. And now I want to help others do the same. So let's go.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. We've got the first of two workshops from corporate to owner. And today is career transition options for greater wealth, autonomy, and purpose. I'm Alan Regala, for those of you who don't know me. And I'll tell you a little bit about my history, kind of how I got to this point as it is today. So my background is technical. Mechanical engineering is what I studied. I had a couple of internships at Hewlett Packard, so I got the feel of the kind of really giant corporate environment. When I graduated, I spent a full 30 days in the corporate world working at a large medical device company before I decided I'm just not ready for life outside of school. So I ended up going back to school the following year. So I spent that year full time, got a master's in mechanical engineering, Stanford. I had a couple really great internships, great jobs, and found a really great position at a design consulting firm called IEO outside of school. And it was a great company. Lots of people wanted to work there, but still I felt a little bit, I don't know, like it just, something wasn't right for me. And one day, a guy from the accounting department came out to me and gave me a Rich Dad, Poor Dad book from Robert Kiyosaki, those of you who are familiar with that. And after reading that, I was like, man, I need to own business. The wealthiest people in the world always seems to own businesses or real estate or whatever. I decided that that's what I wanted to do. This guy tried to get me into multi-level marketing opportunity, and like that did not work out. But what I did figure out was I'm young, was 28 at the time, and decided like I'm going to give it a shot. And so I had an idea, an invention called the Pico Pad, notes, which I had manufactured overseas. I wrote my own patents. I marketed this all across the country, got into stores all over the country, sold it online. It seemed like a great idea. Sticky notes and a little pen that fit in your wallet, so you have notes on the go and everywhere you go. It actually did pretty well for what it was. It's a little $4 product. It's a promotional item. Companies could put their logos on it and stuff. But at the end of the day, the iPhone came out and it's like, ooh, well, I'm going to start not needing this. And what I learned at the end of the day was starting my own business was great. I learned a ton. And this was like a single or double, right? It was not a home run. It was not the multi-million-dollar I'm going to retire product, which I was hoping it would be. And so I realized that, okay, this isn't my path. I don't have a whole bunch of other products that I'm going to like feed into this and have a real business. So I continued to do consulting. And when we moved to Seattle for my wife's work, that's when I was like, you know what? I got to do something different. Like it was just me doing that. And I was like, this doesn't feel like a real business. I want to do something bigger than me. I'd like to have a team of people. And so I started looking at franchise. 5 years earlier, I was like, entrepreneurs do not go into franchise. Real entrepreneurs, they make their own franchise, right? But then I realized, wow, they have a business model. They have a business model that's already set. They have systems and processes in place. And I just need to execute. And so, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And so that was the whole thing that really attracted me to that realm. And I worked with a franchise coach, which is what I do now. And this person did a really long interview with me, was able to provide, my skill sets and interest levels and goals and all those fun things. And they ended up providing a couple different options for me. I was looking at disaster restoration company, kitchen hood clean business, senior care business. And I ended up going with Shelf Chain, it's a home improvement brand. And that is the company I ended up running for the next 14 years. I ended up with 12 territories, ended up being the top performer in my system. I was grossing over $4.5 million in sales. And it was an amazing business. Team of over 20 people. It got kind of bored and ready to just move on and do something else with my life. And so I ended up selling it last year. And now I've come full circle and I help other people that are interested in business ownership get into business. So today's workshop is not about selling franchises. It's all about education and looking at different options that there are for anyone that's looking at transition in their career. All right. So we've got 4 different career options that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be talking about all these different attributes for each of these 4 career options. And it's going to be, again, interactive. We're going to just build this out together and kind of learn as we go, right? So advancing in career, first thing we got here is just money, cash flow, which would be, income, right? And if you are working in a corporate environment, it really just as an employee, then, typically it's like a salary, right? Salary plus whatever, if you have bonuses, or whatever. Now for you, you're going to have to write down, the purpose here is to figure out what can I achieve going down this route, right? And so I'll use examples if I were still in my engineering role, how I would fill this out. You guys can determine for yourselves, what's the cap? For me, is it, for some people, it's going to be, I don't know, it's like $200,000, $300,000, $500,000. I don't know, based on your roles. And I'm not going to ask you guys to answer that question, but I can tell you, for me, an engineer, when I first started out, I think I was making around, I think I started at like 55,000, which was, as an engineer, my first job. You can understand why I didn't feel like I was valued when I was making less than I made in my first internship. So anyways, I worked I think if I would have kept that role and keep working my way up, I don't know, feel like I would be somewhere around, maybe the 250 or, the 300K marks, maybe, by being generous. By the way, we're going to rate these things. I'm just going to pick a scale of like 1 to 5, with 1 being the least desirable and 5 being maybe like the most desirable. And so from that number, I mean, that's pretty decent. I think it's pretty good. It's all relative, right, to what we're shooting, what our goals are, right? I certainly was not close to this at the time I started, but maybe that's where I'd end up if I kept going up the runs, in the corporate world. And so on a scale of 1 to 5, that's not bad, but probably where I was shooting for, I would probably myself kind of rate this as, maybe this would be like let's say it's 3. That's what I would rate that. From 1 to 5. So asset creation. How many people have ever sold a job? Sold their job? Not right? I've never heard. So asset creation, when you have a career and you're working for someone else, you're not building anything to sell later, right? So that's what I mean by asset creation. You'll see the difference when we start talking about owning a business. But in asset creation, on a scale of 1 to 5, I mean, it's really 0. You're working for someone else, you're bringing in your income from your job, and that's it. No tax benefits to being an employee. No tax benefits. Again, you'll see the difference when we start looking at some of these other things. But you're paying, your employment taxes, your payroll taxes on the one side, and then anytime you buy anything from the store or wherever else, you're paying sales tax, right? It's annoying unless you're living in Oregon, I guess. Is there an investment when being an employee? A lot of us have been to college, so that was an investment there already. Like, just say at this stage between now and if you were to advance in the corporate world, maybe get an MBA, I don't know, something like that. But it's relatively low, if anything, as far as in investing. I'd say I give that 2, just because. Actually, from an investment standpoint, if we're looking at the most desirable being a 5, I go the opposite way here. Then I would say that's a 4, because it's a low investment.
Well, you don't have to invest to be in.
You don't have to invest.
You don't invest in other, like maybe getting a degree or something.
Maybe you get a degree or something like that, but it's relatively low, right? How about the risk? What's the risk in being in the corporate world?
Get fired or laid off.
You get fired or laid off, right?
Like a 3.
What's that?
Like a 3.
A 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relatively safe until it's not.
It's relatively safe until it's not. And there's 2 ways to look at it, because there's an investment standpoint. A lot of people would associate the risk with the investment, right? Because you're not really investing a lot of money into it, but there's the loss of the cash flow, right? And then if you have time off, like, you're not getting cash in. And then there's also the risk to your goals, right? One thing we didn't talk about early on was like wherever you're at now, right? And then there's wherever you want to be somewhere up here. You're down here, and the goal is to try to work your way up to your end goal, whatever that is, right? And the goal is to try to work your way up in the different things that you do in life to get towards that goal. And you be in the same general direction though, right? Because you may not know exactly where you want to be in 10 years, 15 years, but if you're heading in completely the wrong direction, like you would probably want to know that now so you can kind of course correct. And so there's a risk if the direction you want to go this is not going to be able to take you there. So there's also that risk too. But yeah, I think I would go with, I'd say, what'd you say? 3?
Yeah, 3
or 3?
2, something in the middle.
Yeah, kind of in the middle. Okay, support. What level of support do you feel that you get from your employer?
Decent amount, right?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, employers want their people to do well, if you've got a good employer. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions to every, but by and large, you should be getting some support, right?
Good positive business.
Yeah.
You get good support. 4
5
or 5.
4 or 5. Okay, say 4 to 5. Sure. Nishant, you spoke to this purpose in your world. This is really good.
Yeah.
Right? So this is an ideal case that you can have, if you can feel the impact that you're having on your clients and what you're doing. You wake up every day and you're like, you may not be excited about the exact work that you're doing, but the mission, the purpose, the overall purpose is great. And so it's a worthy thing that you're doing. And there's also the purpose of kind of whatever your end personal goals are too. Like there's, that aspect of it as well. And so this can be different for everybody in whatever specific job they have, right? So you guys, again, fill that out for yourself. But for me, my purpose, like if I would put myself back in what I was doing before, I was doing medical device design, which is pretty cool. A worthy goal, good mission. So I enjoyed that. From a personal perspective on how it geared towards my end goal, like kind of financially and lifestyle, it wasn't quite mine. So for me, it wasn't a 5. I'd say it was probably more like a 4, but it was pretty good. Okay. Autonomy. Last 2 are autonomy and time. So control over your time. That's what this one speaks to. How do you guys feel? You spoke to a lot of the flexibility, right? That's what it really comes down to. So for you, maybe that's a 5, maybe 4 or 5, probably for you. Would you say?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. How about you guys? Everybody,
Autonomy, 2 or 3.
2 or 3 for you? I'd say probably my role where I was probably similar. I'd say it was like 2 or maybe a 3. But some people, there's obviously working from home can be nice. You end up having more autonomy, but not everybody has that. Obviously different roles as an employee or very great. And the last one is time. And there's a near-term aspect to it and then a long-term aspect to it. So it's going to be for being an employee, it's like, this is actually how much time you spend, right? Autonomy, you can choose when you want to work. That's one thing, but time is actually how much actual time you have to work, right? And it's, if you're an employee, typically 40 hours, right? Full time, 40, could be more, 60 hours, could be whatever, right? So, for that one, I guess it depends on how you rank the amount of time you want to spend working. But I would probably put that lower on the list. Maybe like that again. Maybe what do you think? 2 or 3, 1.
5 is the most desirable.
So the most desirable would be a 5. If you didn't have to work it up.
Oh,
right? Time. This has the amount of time you can work.
Time you put in. Okay.
Yeah.
2.
So yeah, I say I'll give it maybe a 2. Right? Like you're working for someone else, you're gonna have to work unless you can program your AI bot to do what it's supposed to be doing for you. Then it's you're having to spend the time. All right, that all makes sense.
If you're wondering if franchise ownership is right for you, I'd love to help. As a franchise coach, I work one-on-one with my clients to 1, find the perfect business match for their goals, skills, and investment level, and 2, help them prepare to be champions in their business. Here's the best part: my coaching services are completely free. To schedule a 15-minute introduction call, visit athletetoowner.com. The link is in the show notes. Now, back to our show.
Now we're going to talk about buying an existing business. And this is something that there are a lot of people that are looking at doing. There's someone named Cody Sanchez who's very popular right now, and she talks about buying boring businesses, basically, and how she generated wealth doing that. Boring businesses are a great option to buy or to start. And we're going to talk a lot more detail about types of businesses in the next workshop, which is in December for 9th. But for today, we're going to go through the same things, but with the existing businesses. So this would be, why would someone want to buy an existing business? It's for the cash flow, right? Primarily, right? Someone has a job, maybe you got someone with a really high paying job and they're like, yeah, I want to just generate cash. I've got money to invest in a business and I want to invest the money and have it just keep churning more money for me, right? And I'm willing to spend a good deal on that. So with cash flow, again, there's so many different types of businesses. Like this can span a huge range, right? You could buy a business for $50,000, right? It's probably, it's not generating a lot of money or any money. And so there might be other reasons why you would want to buy it to fix it up, right? Because maybe you got some assets that you're buying, really. But the whole, really, most people are buying something that has really good cash flow. Let's say it's generating this $300,000, right? In income. If it's generating 300, the business itself is probably going to sell for something like, I don't know, $1.5 million, we'll say, right? And so you'd, if that's what you can find the right kind of business, and to try to match what kind of cash flow you're trying to get to, right? And again, that could be $1 million. You could find $1 million business that might cost, $5 million you could buy or more, something like that. So this is going to be a huge, huge range. But as far as the rating, it's pretty high in desirability because you just have to invest more money into it, right? But you can scale that up and you have, millions and millions of dollars that you could earn, which, it's not capped. There's no cap. So I'm going to give that cap. Now, creation. Now, this is something you can sell, right? And there's usually typically a multiple of earnings. Sell discretionary income or have these different ways of measuring value of the business. But for example, if it was generating this at the end of the day, that 300K, depending on number of factors, it could be a multiple of that by like 3 or 4 or 5 or however much. I used 5 as an example earlier. It's 1.5 million. So you're creating an asset. When you have a business, you have something that you can sell, which is interesting to think because if you have a business, every dollar that you make, you're creating this value and it's worth a multiple of that at the end of the day, and you sell it to someone else. This is ideal. Tax benefits. So going back to the benefits as owning a business, if you were making $300,000 as a salary, you'd be paying your payroll taxes, which is about 7.5%, 8% of that, just for the payroll taxes, right? And then you have your normal income tax, right, based for the rest of that. For someone who owns a business, right, you've got, if I'm the owner of the business that's generating 300K in profits, I'm probably going to pay myself, maybe I'll pay myself, say $75,000 or $80,000. And now I'm only paying, my payroll taxes are on a much smaller number. And then I give the rest in distributions to myself. So this is how people save money on taxes. That's on the payroll side. And then on my computer, my cell phone, my car, all these other things that I need for the business that run through the business. And so I'm not paying taxes on those things as well. So this is, when I read the book, this Rich Dad Poor Dad book, this is one of the big things here, was taxes and why, really wealthy people own businesses. It's because they end up saving a lot of money on taxes. So you get huge tax benefits here. Does that all make sense, by the way? If there's any questions, feel free to shoot them out. Now, from an investment standpoint, existing business, you want this, that's a lot of money, right? So $1.5 million for something that's generating that, as an example. And you can find any sizes of businesses. There's lots of them out there. But overall, you're going to end up spending a lot of money to be able to because you're buying the cash flow, because you're buying at the end of the day. Again, you could buy a little fixer-upper and things like that. But for this example, I'm going to say, from an investment standpoint, it's a high investment. So I would give this, a little bit. From a risk standpoint, the idea behind buying an existing business, why it's so popular right now, is that it's already been up and running. Typically, 5 years, they say, is the mark where if a business has been operating for about 5 years or more, that's, it survived because a lot of most businesses go under within that first 5 years. So, the risk, if you're buying it, assuming you're buying it, past that mark, you're buying a big business, generally it'll be lower. Obviously, it's still a business and things can happen, but and generally it would say it's a bit lower. So I don't know if that would be, what did we give this one? We give this one a 3. So I don't know, I'd probably give this one, it's probably 3 or 4 or something like that.
Wait,
So 2 or 3. 2, give it a 2.
Still sell it, right?
Okay. You buy business, what kind of support are you going to get? Because, right? There's no one there. You might have an owner who you might have a contract for some period of time just to help you out, but in reality, they don't necessarily need you. If they just want to get out of town, they're maybe on to something else. You really have no reliable support here. So this is purpose from a financial perspective. Maybe hopefully this is gearing towards your goals. As far as what you do and the mission of the business and all that sort of stuff, that really depends. This is where things get a little bit tricky as far as finding the right business where you're trying to make a certain amount of money, right? But then you're also like, oh, I'd like to also have it be in this other area where I'm really passionate about, for example, right? Can you find those two things that have it be available right now in my area that I want to buy? Like getting all those things to work together. It can be tricky. I think most people end up more buying because of these other things and less about the purpose. So I would give this one a lower rating, probably 2.
2 or 3. Yeah.
Autonomy, if you're owning the business, and hopefully if it's running, you've got a well-oiled machine, and you hopefully have that kind of autonomy. I would probably give that a 5, right? Because you have hopefully a manager in place and you're able to do what you want to do.
It goes down. Maybe it gets to a 5.
That's true. That's very true.
Mod 5, now you become the Mod 5.
Yeah.
You're there every day.
Actually, it's a really good point. So not all businesses are built the same, right? And what stage of that business? Oftentimes the idea, and this is why this can sound really appealing for most people buying an existing business, is that the assumption is all the pieces are in place and it's running. And as soon as you buy it, it's just going to keep running. That's a really good point. In some cases, you buy a mom and pop, right? And then mom and pop leave, and then you are the mom and pop running that business, right? And so you're just buying, in essence, if you're doing that, you're kind of buying junk, right? And so, yes,
Hopefully the $1.5 million business you're buying is well.
hopefully, but not always. But even in those cases, but people take that into account. You should be. If you're looking to buying a business, you should be, because I sold my business, right? So I went through that experience on the other side. And I know when people are valuing the businesses, they'll take into account, well, what would it cost to hire a manager? And they'll factor that into an expense. So they'll pay less for the business so that they can hire a manager. That's it. But I think you're right. Say, it could be a 5, but, I say it's some range really, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a 3 to a 5, depending on the kind of business that you buy. Great point. Okay. And I think the same thing applies to this last one too, right? Time. If you're buying a well-oiled machine, and I'll tell you, the business I sold was a well-oiled machine, had manager in place, and it just kept running. The guy who bought my business is still working his full-time job. But I think it's actually pretty rare, I would say, from what I hear, that something like this happens where it's fully set up, it's got the manager, it's running, and it's a well-oiled machine. That is usually an exception and not the normal situation. So typically in the near term, you're probably going to have to work to fix things, to hire the right people, clean out the team or whatever, all those sorts of things. And then maybe in the long term, the idea is that you get to that 5, right? So near term, it's probably more from the time standpoint. I mean, compared to like a job, you're really going to have to probably be well, if it's mostly working, I'll say maybe it's a 2. And then maybe eventually you kind of work yourself up to a 5 is the goal, right? That seem reasonable?
Yeah.
So you definitely see some positives here. And by the way, there's no right answer between any of these things that we're looking at. This is all just, there's different situations for different people with different goals. And it's all about, trying to understand the options and see what makes most sense for you. Because, I tell you, owning a business is most certainly not for everybody. And you can find a good job where you've got really good purpose and you've got, you're making good money and you've got good control of your time and you're not working that many hours. I mean, you get about a wonderful setup. Any questions on that one? Okay. We are on to starting an independent business. This is KikoPad wallet notes right here, 2.0. No, there's different ways for starting your own business. Like you kind of in between is if you are, let's say you have an existing job right now and you're like, you know what, I can consult for other companies like this and I can still do mostly what I'm doing now, but I just, I'm going to do it for myself as an independent contractor, something like that, right? It's essentially kind of a mix where you kind of still, you're not selling that, you're not creating an asset, right? Then you've got probably good cash flow coming in. There are some other benefits, some of the tax benefits and other things, but that's, I would say, not what I'm referring to when I'm talking about this. I'm talking about you're starting something from scratch, or inventing something, you're building something that you're trying to build something like this that you can sell later. That's what I'm talking about here. So cash flow, you're starting from scratch. That's probably really tough. I'd say right at the beginning, eventually, can't even, if we're just making this up, I can't even really rank this, right? Because who knows? Because this is depending on what kind of business you have, right?
Yeah, I'm going to start out and launch.
So you don't know, right? I mean, I'm going to put like 1 to 2, or at least in the beginning. This is a much riskier proposition. The risk on this, I'm just going to jump right here. Most businesses, they fail. Like when they start up, they just do. And so I'm going to give this 1 in the risk department. If you get it up and running and you create something that is amazing, then yeah, definitely create an asset and create something that you can sell. And I think certainly route 5 tax benefits, you get some sale those, and then you've got the investment. This is going to range, of course, like so many different types of businesses. But that number, what did we give this one here? Investment was a 1. It's going to be less expensive than buying an existing business, right? You're starting from scratch. Here you're buying, if you buy a multiple, you're buying the multiple because it's already going, it's already running, right? And so it won't be this low, but it's still, you're still starting from scratch. So I'm going to give that maybe a 2. It's not as much as this one, but still going to be a lot. Not getting any support, right? Now, you're starting this business on your own. I'm assuming you have purpose in mind, and you're going to be doing something that's meaningful for you. So give that autonomy. This is your own business. You're going to end up working a lot, right? Especially at the beginning. And, at the very beginning, it's going to be a 1. And long term, you hope to bring people in place, and you hope that ends up turning into a 5. And if it is your business, you get to choose, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you do get to choose. And so it may not be doing as well as you hope if you don't spend as much time, but, I guess it's maybe 4 to 5, something like that. And I would say a great example of this, the successful version of this, is Tennis Center St. Point, which we're standing in right now. So I'll give kudos to Johan, who is the founder of the TCSP St. Point here. This is an amazing facility. And, what was it like for you, Johan, starting this? I mean, I can't even imagine something to this scale. Like I made this little thing here, and like it was a pain in the ass. So for you to build something to this scale.
I mean, I would say a lot of what you wrote on that chart is pretty close, except for the investment piece.
Is the 1?
Yeah, it's a lot of money, right?
Right.
Yeah, something to this scale is going to be
This, right?
Yeah.
And I think most businesses from scratch are going to be like that, unless it's just you and you're selling your service.
It's true.
I'm a consultant. I sell it doesn't cost me anything at that point other than whatever experience I've gained.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to build a physical thing or produce a product, right, you're going to have to throw in some cash.
Yeah, I'm going to get rid of that. You're right. I was mostly thinking of like something small like this, but man, most things.
It depends of how big.
I think it's a scale.
It is.
I don't think,
It's going to vary, but it's going to not be cheap. I mean, for most things that you're trying to build that's big, that's not just you and a service, but that's actually, something that you're going to grow into something that you can sell for like a nice multiple is going to take money, right?
I mean, Mark Boudreaux took a very successful restaurant. People know that. And so I don't know if you want to,
Mark, do you want to share
your numbers for snooze?
I mean,
Roughly speaking.
we spent $1 million on the build up, and cash flow was, it was week to week. We had to make deposits daily.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it gets skinny,
Mm-hmm.
on quarterly taxes come around and things like that.
Yeah. It's scary and it's stressful. It can be, right? And this is where obviously there's different types of businesses, right? There's so many types of businesses, and some businesses, food type businesses, a lot of them are much lower margin businesses. And so you don't have a lot of wiggle room And you really do need to pay attention to that, the cash flow and when deposits are being made and when you're collecting payment and all those. All right, we're on to the last one here. So we're going to learn a little bit about franchising here. What is a franchise, right? The franchise is just a business, and it's a business that someone created and said, hey, this works really well. I have all these systems in place and these processes, and I want to distribute this business all across the country or across many countries or whatever it is. So it's just business, and it's just one that has been set up in such a way that this business can easily be replicated in other areas, right? And then they charge. And why you would do this versus like if I had a restaurant business, a food service business, and I started it here, and it was like, hey, this is, $2 million. I'm making, whatever it is, 300K or whatever the number is of profit. I've got all the systems and processes. Wow, I really want to blow this up, right? If I had 10 of these, I could make 10 times that, right? And then you look at that, oh, it's $1 million to build it up. It's like, it's not going to be so easy, right? But if instead I said, hey, I'm going to offer this as a license to other people, and they use their money to start it up, and then they just pay me a royalty on what they make, then I can still make money and still expand the brand. And I can, that's a way for me to really grow this thing without me having to invest in every single unit. So that's what a franchise is.
If you're finding today's conversation valuable, I'd like to offer you my free guide, the Franchise Fit Playbook, a champion's guide to choosing the right business. This comprehensive resource walks you through the exact process I use with my coaching clients to identify their perfect franchise match. Download it for free at athletetooner.com/playbook. You'll find the link in the show notes. Now, let's get back to our show.
When it comes to cash flow, and you're going to be looking at the goal is to be able to you get to choose. So, and this is important when you're going into buying a franchise, is to think ahead of what those goals are. What is it you want? Because some people may be 50s. They're like, you know what? I'm going to be retiring pretty soon. Or maybe they're a little bit older, and they're like, I've made really good money in the corporate, and I don't want to be bored in retirement. I just want something to do. And so they want to buy something. They're fine with, generating 150K or whatever it is, but just to stay busy, and they've got, their lifestyle, it meets their lifestyle needs. But there's other people that, hey, I want to make something. I want to make $1 million. I want to make 3K or something, where my wife doesn't have to work and I pay for the kids' colleges and all that fun stuff. So you think about that ahead of time, and then you plan accordingly. So I'll give this one 5 for sure, because you get to decide what that is, what you want that to be. Again, you're creating an asset. You got all the tax benefits. Like businesses, the investment level can range. If you're opening a restaurant or anything with brick and mortar that you have to build out, you're still going to have to pay those same costs, right? So I would give this one, if the investment level on buying existing is 1, this one is slightly better here because you're paying on the multiple again, because it's been a business that is generating money already. So it's not going to be as expensive as here, but it will depend. It's going to be a range. I'd say 1 to 2. I think it certainly can be better. You're starting it from scratch, so it really shouldn't be as expensive as buying an existing business, but it's going to range. There are a number of different franchises in all sorts of categories with different varying investment levels, from less than $100,000, $75,000, all the way to multiple millions of dollars. Risk. There's definitely going to be risk here. We gave 2 for buying an existing business. Very high for starting an independent business. With franchising, if it's already running, this one I would say, is probably is a little less risky. But you also have the model that's been running ideally in other areas, and you could have 200,000 other locations that have proven this out, right? And if you're in a similar market to some of these other ones, the risk for this is not going to be that high. So I would be kind of probably somewhere around the same that's here, because you've got this true support. So
maybe a 3 on the rest, with a little less because it's already kind of improvement. I get that one is 2, but
yeah. I mean, I just said because I think this one or 2. If this one was, they're pretty similar, I'd say. Yeah, 2 to 3. Okay, support. And this is one of the big reasons why franchising is really great is this level of support. So you're going to have a franchisor. They're going to go take you through the training process. You're going to have you usually have support on site if you have a store or restaurant or whatever. You have people on site as you're opening and before that to help prepare for the grand opening. They're going to have an ongoing coach, a franchise business coach that's going to talk to you on a regular basis, go over your numbers and all of these other things. So support is the support is really, I would say, it's one of the things that makes this attainable, which is one of the reasons I like franchising, is that this is something that is you get to choose. There's so many out there. There's so many different types of businesses that you can go through, many different categories, and you get to pick, and you get to go through, and you get to talk to them, and you get to interview them, and all those sorts of things. Which is why this is a cool thing, and having that support just makes this attainable. Just for most people, as long as you have a purpose. Again, we get to choose. So this is part of what you're part of the process is figuring out what's going to make sense for you. So you get to choose, but I'll give it, let's say, 4 or 5. And I will say, oftentimes when people initially go through the process, they're thinking, what am I passionate about? And I say that's usually the wrong way to look at it when we're looking at building the business. It's important that you do find value in it, and then you are going to have an impact. You feel like you're going to have an impact in it. I tell people that we should look at based on their skills and their interest levels and their goals. Start there, because in reality, when you're starting a business and it's like a small business, as long as you're having an impact, a really positive impact on your end clients, whatever that might be. I mean, it could be collecting trash. It could be washing windows, cleaning homes. It could be cleaning out sewer drains. And you're hopefully not the one doing that work, but you'll have team members that are. You will find that you can find purpose in anything and having to be really meaningful. That's one of the secrets to doing well in business is being all in and really you having finding a noble purpose in whatever it is that you're doing and then instilling that entire team, whatever it is. All right. Autonomy. Again, you're going to be able to choose. You're going to have control over that. You see, we gave like 4 or 5. And then time. So near-term time for sure is going to suck. But the beginning is going to be, you got to go all in, first 12 months, are going to be rough. It's 12, 18 months in the near term. So that's a 1. But long term, you do it right. You can work as well as you want, as long as you have the right people underneath you that deal with the business, right? Any questions, comments, feedback on this?
I think the autonomy thing for a franchise might not be necessarily 5 because you don't have clear reign to do what you want with the companies. Like you can't just take McDonald's and be like, yo, I'm doing chow mein.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, you're right. I was thinking of autonomy more from how I spend my time.
Oh, sorry.
But you're right. There's an aspect to autonomy, which is there's certain things you can't do. Like, so if you're like, I want to change this McDonald's logo, this logo sucks. I'm going to create my own. That is not going to help. Yeah, Cracker Barrel. I'll make my own modern looking Cracker Barrel. You're right. I'd say less autonomy with regards to less control.
Control of the business part. I mean, as far as time, you can kind of choose a little bit when you want to work.
Yeah, that's true. But
to a certain degree,
you're right about that. Maybe I'll just we'll give this a sort of 4. I'm happy with that. There are definitely things you give up with a franchise model, and that is one of those things.
Creativity of what you can.
Well, there's certain creative aspects of it, and I will say you've got franchises on a spectrum, right? You've got established franchises like a McDonald's, which is what everyone thinks of, right? Of franchising, and those have tens of thousands of stores, right? Systems are dialed in. Right, processing systems, you don't need to change a thing. They got them all ready for you. They tell you how long to spend on whatever in the next station, and it's everything dialed in. And then on the other hand, you've got these emerging brands, right? These are ones that have been around for maybe they have like 2 franchisees, maybe 10, maybe 20. They usually say around 100 locations is kind of that transition area. But these folks, they've got the corporate store that they started. And maybe they've got a few others, but they're the ones they're still evolving their processes, right? And so on the one hand, they're going to be really supportive because they want you to succeed. It's so early on, but you're going to have some things that you come across like, hey, there's nothing, this isn't in the manual. What do I do here? And so you're gonna have to problem solve and figure some of these things out for yourself, more so than in the established brands. But they're also looking for more feedback. And so they're actually more open to things. If you learn something like, oh man, I just figured this out, $5 foot long. So I'm like, give it to me. And then they spread it to the rest of the system. And that's how things grow in any franchise system is getting that kind of feedback, which is fun. So depending on your level of entrepreneurialism, if you're more entrepreneurial, emerging brands probably would actually be more for you versus if you're just like, just give it to me and I'm just going to, do it. I don't want to have to think about whatever, making modifications, then, more established brands are probably more up to it. So with this, we've got these 4 different options and, just take a moment to reflect on these and think about which of these might be something you're leaning towards. Now, success is possible in all of these things, including the internet business. The reason why this is attractive for a lot of people is it's already done pretty much. Yes, find that. And that's why this is also attractive, is because the model is there. The business hasn't been started necessarily and up and running. You're starting it, but you've got the support. You've got the people who've done it before you do it, the model. And you've got a whole, not just the franchisor, but all of the franchisees across the system are there to help you as well. And that's one thing I love about this is having every other week or a couple times or once a month or whatever it is, talking to other franchise owners that are doing the exact same business as they just in a different location, and to be able to get their support and to hear, well, how are you doing that? What have you tried this? Things of that nature where you're really growing with your peers.
So the other thing about franchisees, you talk about systems, but you're not talking about that. You also get the supply chain, and it's a stable supply chain. Yes, and the products are consistent with things like that.
Yeah. It's a great point. You get the supply chain and all the back end stuff. I mean, one thing that's really nice about this, there's technology. They're always technology forward. They are building out the supply chain. So if you started a painting business right now, you just decided like, hey, I'm going to start an independent painting business. They have the volume of hundreds of locations and they're buying like, tens of thousands of gallons of paint and can get the better pricing than someone who's just starting off on their own. So yeah, scale is really big with this. You've got at Shelf Genie, they were purchased by Neighborly. So Neighborly is this bigger brand that owns like 20 something brands underneath it. And Shelf Genie is one of them. The interesting thing about Neighborly is they have just deep pockets, right? And they have the ability to pool resources for all of those brands, those 20 something brands. They could say, okay, we're looking at doing some digital marketing, and they bring some vendors together. Like, okay, what kind of pricing can you give us if we've got all of these franchises, these businesses that will use your services, right? And so that's that amount of scale that they've got, which is great. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you being here and look forward to hopefully seeing you on the next one.
If you find value in my content, please take a moment to subscribe and leave a rating wherever you're listening or watching. Or if you have suggestions for topics or improvements, shoot me a message directly. Your support means a lot to me. Thanks for listening to the Franchise Champion Show. I'm Alan Regala, and I'll see you next week.